hunting, fishing, and everything outdoors. Experience the tradition. You're listening to the Green Top Outdoors Podcast with your host, Hunter Brooks.
Welcome to another episode of the Green Top Outdoors Podcast. We got a couple of conservation officers with us today.
Good job.
Not game wardens,
No,
conservation officers.
Good job.
And we're going to talk about the Hollywood buck story, which was a quite the story, 18 months ago, roughly? It would have been muzzleloader.
December of 23.
23, that's right. Okay. So coming up, it'll be, about 18 or more months ago. First, I'm going to start to my left here. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. Give us a little background on how long you've been with DWR and anything else about you.
So First Sergeant Tyler Bumgarner. I've been with the Department of Wildlife Resources for 18 years now. Started back in 2006, and I'm currently the supervisor for Region 1A, which is basically everything north of the James River, east of 95, and our Region 1 work area.
And Zach?
So I'm Special Agent Zach Howlett. I've been on with the agency about 8.5 years now. I'm the Region 1 Special Agent, so my work area is essentially Dinwiddie, all the way up over to the Amelia County line in Chesterfield, all the way out to the Eastern Shore, down to Virginia Beach.
Oh, wow. You got a big area, man.
Yes.
Well, thank you guys for what you do. I think you guys have a thankless job. It's also, I don't think people realize how dangerous of a job it is. But you guys, it's really appreciated for the time and effort you guys put into it. And I know sometimes people have not the greatest things to say about conservation officers, but I've always respected what you guys can do, and I really appreciate it. And Todd, you haven't had any run-ins.
No, good to go.
Yeah, good to go.
Come on, man, we're not bringing that up.
So let's get into the good content of what this episode's about, and that's about the Hollywood buck, because this story just went national really fast. I mean, I'm talking, it was like 48 hours. It was. Everywhere. They were talking about it on the Meat Eater podcast, and it was in 2 or 3 big outdoor life magazines. It got a lot of attention. Give us a little backstory on where this all began.
Right. So backstory was I happened to be working the day that the call came in for it. I was actually working as an FTO, so I had a PO with me, a probationary officer that day. We were kind of up in that area anyway, but I had gotten a text from another officer about just a Facebook post that popped up that afternoon, I guess it was, right, on the 14th of December from Star City. And, it had already had hundreds of comments by the time I had gotten it, and it was only, a couple hours after the post went up. Hey, you need to look into this deer. Everybody's saying it's from Richmond and not from Prince Edward.
That's right, because he had posted it was killed in Prince Edward, I think. And for listeners that don't know, there's Star City Whitetails, and there's multiple Facebook pages and social media pages.
Essentially, it's a brag board.
It's like a
harvest. You put your harvest up there. You've done all that work. You're proud of the harvest that you made. You put it up there to show the world, hey, this is what I was able to do. It's Prince Edward County, right? Mm-hmm. Isn't that like 70 miles?
Right. It'd be about 70 miles from Hollywood Cemetery.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But
yeah.
So we like I said, I was made aware of it that afternoon. So first thing was, all right, well, let's see if we can find any backstory on this guy that made the post. Look him up. He's got his all his licenses, all that stuff. That all checks out. So it's like, all right, next step, let's see if he's even checked his deer in. Obviously, the deer wasn't checked in that we could see.
Oh, wow. Okay.
We had only seen one prior check-in from that earlier that year. That was it. That was just an 8-pointer. But that was the only deer he had checked in. That was the only deer we had ever seen checked in under this gentleman's account also.
Okay, so he posted a picture, and he hadn't even checked the deer in yet.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
So we had that right away as the check-in stuff. Next thing was, all right, let's find out where this guy lives. As working these things, it's, you want to try to work them as fast as you can because
Sure.
evidence starts to disappear. And we saw that where Facebook got deleted really, really fast from this individual within several hours of his post going almost viral on the internet.
Ruh-roh. Get that down.
So right then we're trying to, like I said, track this guy down. Where does he live? We end up going to the one address that's listed, which was his parents. He didn't live there. He actually lived at his grandmother's house in Richmond. So we go there, try to just do a knock and talk with him. But at that time, like I said, no one was home or anything like that. So we start game planning on, all right, what's the next steps that we need to do to try, like I said, to find out a little bit more info on this
So,
guy.
and I have a question. You said you had 2 addresses listed there. And I have no idea, and you may be able to speak to it or not, but as far as the way that you guys would run your investigation, When you're looking at the addresses there, are you pulling from the information that the state has compiled through the licensing system?
Right. So he had the one address, which was, I guess, his parents' address listed in the licensing system. And when we spoke with individuals at that house, they led us to the other house that he did.
So I guess that's a pet peeve for me too, as one of the largest licensing agents in the state. If you're a licensing agent and you're listening, when you reissue a license for someone each year, it's important. And I tell our guys here, ask, is this your current address?
Yeah. Please update your address.
This is a prime example of where this can help, where this can be of aid to the conservation officers out there. Confirm that the address is current and that is their current physical address. Who knows what happens down the road? So it saves you some confusion, hopefully, in the end.
Right, absolutely. Because like I said, we, trying to bounce back and forth between the houses, that we lost a couple hours of time just doing that in the beginning part of the investigation. So we ended up, like I said, at the right house. I don't know, it was probably around like 4 or 5 o'clock that night. Obviously, no one's home. We ended up speaking with some of the neighbors in the neighborhood there. They were able to provide us with some really good information about the individual that night as well. So I had myself, the PO that was with me. I actually called for another officer to come help with canine just in case we needed the dog for anything like that. Kind of waited around for several hours. The guy never showed up. I didn't want to call him right off the get-go to kind of, like I said, I mean, I think he knew the gig was kind of already on to him a little bit.
I'm sure, yeah.
But I didn't want to tip our hand on anything, so I held off on calling for a little while. But that night, we were able to do a search behind the residence on Richmond Public School property with the canine, and we were able to locate 3 deer carcasses behind that guy's house on public school property. And one of those carcasses was the carcass of the buck that was in the picture.
Oh, wow.
Now,
Okay.
and tell me if I'm wrong here, I heard 3 carcasses, right?
Right.
Did I hear correctly that, as the investigation progressed, that you guys feel a certain degree of certainty that multiple deer were taken by this individual from the property, from the Hollywood Cemetery?
That's correct.
Okay.
Once it started going viral, there was a local Richmond photographer who's kind of famous for taking a bunch of pictures in the cemetery, and what better evidence to have than professional, close-up photos of these deer that we're now investigating.
Yeah.
And so once it started going viral, there were other previous posts that this individual had put on Star City whitetails, and so the members of that group started going back and searching this guy's post history, and they're like, well, this deer looks exactly like this other deer that this photographer has a picture of, in November of 2023 or whatever the day was. And then this other deer looks very similar to this other deer. So at that point, we kind of had this idea that, all 3 of those deer potentially had come from that area based upon looking at the previous photos of deer that he had posted on Star City for the current season and the photos that we were able to obtain from that local photographer.
And so at that point, y'all, so you found the carcasses, and then you kind of knew you were onto something.
Right. All 3 carcasses kind of, using the photos from social media of all 3 deer, you could kind of tell each stage of decay on each deer was different. Obviously, the first deer, it had just been skull capped, but the whole carcass was still there.
They didn't even take the meat off of it.
It was already down to bones, basically.
Yeah, okay.
Second carcass, there was no head at all, which matched up with one of the pictures on Facebook that he had put where it had been caped out and the head was in a cooler basically to go to a taxidermist.
Okay.
And then the Hollywood buck carcass itself, that was just to where he had taken no meat off the deer at all. Basically, he had just cut the head off right behind the ears, threw the whole carcass in a creek back there. So the whole deer was laying in the creek when we found it.
And this is on the south side of the river of the James?
This would be on the north side.
North side, okay.
Well, excuse me, his residence is on the south side. I was thinking of the cemetery and stuff was all on the north side.
On the north side, yeah.
With the carcass, like I said, it was if he posted it on the 14th. We were there that evening on the 14th, so the carcass was fresh, hadn't been bloated or anything like that. We were able to match up, the entry wounds that you could see in the pictures. And then other characteristics on the deer as well from the pictures that he had taken. We were able to match that up to say for sure this is going to be the body of the deer that's in that picture.
And could y'all tell if it was killed with a particular firearm or bow or
I think
anything?
in the pictures on Star City was with a muzzle loader, correct?
Right. So he had posted with the picture of the muzzle loader. We were able to that entry wound that you can see kind of on top of up near the spine. That was from an arrow.
Yeah.
Okay. There was an additional entry wound in the deer that we located that either looked like it was shot with a field tip close up because it had a perfectly symmetrical hole, and it was just an entry wound. There was no exit wound to it, and we ended up running like a metal detector over the deer to see if we could find any bullet fragments, anything like that. We were able to pull the tip of an arrow out of the deer itself, so we were able to dig that out that night.
Field point?
There wasn't a field point. It was the tip of just a fixed blade.
Okay.
That was
like a screw on
It'd be
tip.
like
to
the tip of
blade.
like a muzzy broadhead
Yep.
or something.
Yeah,
that
okay.
screws
So that-
on that
that
little tip.
Yeah, so
Gotcha.
that was still in the deer, but that, like I said, we were able. So we knew it had archery equipment that was used, but the other small entry wound, like I said, it was consistent with something that, you know, my theory would have been it got shot, you know, spined it, it laid down. Somebody else went up and just shot it with a field point.
Yeah.
To basically finish it off.
Yeah. So at this point, you got him for not checking a deer in at that. And then anything else on top of that?
So right from the get-go, once we found all 3 carcasses and we had acquired more of the photos online of the additional deer, so we had 3 deer that he is posing with for that season. Only one's checked in, so we had 2 check-in violations. And then with all the carcasses, those weren't on his property; those were on Richmond Public School property. So we had some dumping charges, littering charges on that. And then, like I said, interviewing the neighbors and people right around that area, we were able to get some additional information that he was, moving some of the equipment, tarps and things like that down the street to some vacant lots to get rid of. We were able to secure permission to search those places and found some more evidence there. This all happened, like I said, within a couple hours of us getting on scene at his residence that night.
Okay, so it's progressed quickly then.
Very quickly.
So obviously this guy lived in the area. He knew about, and I guess quick backstory on the Hollywood Cemetery and the deer that live in that area and cruise the riverbanks. They've been there a very long time. People go to see them annually. They take pictures of them, and they're very old deer. They are very large racks, trophy deer that people would dream about,
Yeah, and the
hunting
photography
one.
community out there amongst those people, I feel like they're pretty beloved deer, right? Like,
Yes.
they know they're deer.
And I would say you'd almost go as far as saying these are tame deer.
Correct.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean,
These are park deer.
Their interaction with humans is,
Yeah.
you could almost walk up and pet them.
Absolutely. Or do something else, film.
Yeah.
So, all right. So at this point,
Charges are mounting, sounds like.
And this guy lives in the vicinity of Hollywood Cemetery, or he works over there or something, or?
So I think he lived maybe 20 minutes away
It's
or
about 20
so
minutes or so
from the
Okay.
cemetery.
area.
As far as what he did, we had no clue as far as what his job employment was or
Okay.
anything like that. So we, like I said, the information we got from the neighbors was helpful. That led us to there possibly being a second suspect as well. We were able to get a vehicle description. We got some information that early that morning of the 14th, around 3:30 in the morning, the main suspect, and that other individual were at the house, at the residence around 3:30. They got back sometime that morning. They heard some discussion about hunting activity and stuff going on. They saw some crossbows come out of vehicles. And then the next morning, like I said, that's when all the pictures got posted.
Okay.
So that was some really helpful information that we got. It kind of established a little bit of a timeline for us.
And it was 2 individuals together.
2 individuals that night that, like I said, I don't know. We didn't know the involvement of the other individual other than he was there that
Right.
night around 3:30.
Okay.
So if I'm tracking at this point, you've been to the property, you've found the 3 carcasses, you've been to the adjacent property. Other evidence was moved to. You've interviewed the neighbors. Did we talk to the suspect at this point? I say we, but you. I feel like I'm vicariously in this. This is exciting for me.
No, so we still hadn't even spoke with the suspect yet.
Okay.
Nobody was home that we knew of that night. We stayed there till around 8, 9 o'clock. And then I made the decision. I said, well, we're not going to sit here all night on this guy. I'll just call. I'll leave a voicemail if he doesn't answer. So I left it very brief. I just said, hey, this is Officer Howlett. Give me a call back when you get a chance. And we left it at that. And we were going to pick it up the next morning. So next morning comes around, I'm actually off that day. Obviously, we had gotten probably dozens of tips between the time the Facebook post was made and that next morning.
Sure.
I mean, it was just constant tips coming in.
I'm sure a lot of people knew who the guy was, and
People knew who he was. There was a lot of Facebook community, social media community that reached out. A lot of other officers from other parts of the state were reaching out with info that they may have had on,
Yeah.
from other people. First Sergeant Bumgarner was working that day. I think he started that's kind of when his role came into it, because I was scheduled to be off that next day. And I believe you were trying to find out a little bit more on this second vehicle and who that suspect may have been, because we did have a lead that the other vehicle involved was like a black SUV, pretty distinguishable stickers, things like that on it. So we were trying to figure out who that may have belonged to and a little bit more info, like I said, on this suspect, because we didn't know anything about him until the post was made. The main suspect, he gives me a call the next day around 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Okay.
I was surprised that he did. He gives me a call. He says, "Hey, I got your message. If you want to talk, I'll talk to you, but I only want to talk to you." I said, "All right, that's fine." I said, "I'll be there in an hour. It takes me an hour to get up to your house." Hop in the truck, start heading towards Richmond. I called First Sergeant Bumgarner. I said, "Hey, guy just called me. He wants to talk." So I didn't know anything about the guy. I said, if you could come, just kind of watch from afar, make sure, if I need backup or anything like that, your guys will be close by. I'm going to be there in about an hour. So I show up. It's, 4 o'clock, 4:15 in the afternoon. First Sergeant Bumgarner's down at the dead-end street, just overwatching the house and stuff for me. And that's where, like I said, we start picking up on the interview right then and there that next day on the 15th.
Okay.
And so I actually had the same PO that he did the day before with me the next day, and so we kind of head that way. And
man,
I got to the guy's house probably an hour, because we were already heading that way. So I got there an hour before he did, and we're just taking up surveillance, just kind of watching the house and the street just to see what's going on. Hit our vehicles and walk through the city school property, and just kind of took up a good position of surveillance. And probably about 15 minutes before he got there, Officer Howlett got there, I can see the individual kind of walk from the backyard. So we already know there's 3 deer carcasses back there from the previous evening, and he's coming out of the backyard, coming around to the front, and then he goes in the house. So we know he's there. Was able to observe him through binoculars, and positively identified that was who we were looking for.
Did y'all leave the carcasses there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we left them there.
Okay.
Took pictures, obviously. Documented the scene.
Okay. So he probably at this point doesn't know you've been down there.
Correct.
Yeah, he had no idea.
He had no
Correct.
idea. Okay.
So, like I said, we're just sitting there from a distance, just because he said he only wanted to talk to Special Agent Howlett here, so we just kind of letting him do his thing, and we're there if we need to be.
And then you show up, and he answers the door, or?
Yep. So, obviously there's a lot going through your mind on the ride up there.
Oh, I'm sure.
You're thinking,
yeah.
All right, I got one shot to basically get everything I need from this guy if he's going to talk. So you try to game plan what all you're going to ask.
How you strategize,
how you're going to play it, and hope you don't miss anything.
Yep.
Sure enough, like I said, I get there, knock on the door, he answers, and we get him to, I get him to come outside. We just do an interview outside on the tailgate of my truck, a couple hours. Kind of get him.
A couple hours.
We were probably at the house for 3 or 4 hours, and then from there we left that scene and retrieved some stuff.
Okay.
But the initial interview with him was about 2 to 3 hours.
Good grief. Okay.
I kind of get him to first just, let's run through everything that happened right off the get-go. I shot the deer, but I didn't use a muzzleloader. I used a bow. I didn't kill it in Prince Edward. I killed it, I think he said Chesterfield or Richmond.
It's Chesterfield.
So he's not trying to hide anything at this point. I think he realizes he's caught.
Right. So the way we worked the interview is I kind of just let him go with whatever he wanted to tell me from the get-go.
Sure.
And then we kind of start picking apart what we can on it. So I could kind of tell pretty quick that he was making it up as he was going. A lot of things didn't add up with what I already knew.
So he's not being forthcoming. So the story's changed, like trying to cover his tail for some of it, but trying to spin it the best he can.
Right,
okay.
Right. He tried to make it as plausible as what he could. During the interview, shows me on the map where he was hunting. He admitted that, when he showed me, I said, well, you have permission to hunt at that spot? Well, no, I don't have permission there. I was like, well, you're trespassing on that spot then. And that wasn't at the cemetery. That was a different spot in Chesterfield that he said he killed the deer at.
He gave what I call a lot of half-truths in my experience. And so, he admits to killing the deer, which we obviously know, but I didn't kill it with the muzzleloader. I killed it with the archery equipment, but I killed it here, not there. And then so at this point, when we're kind of communicating at the time, and the moment he says, "Well, I killed it here," well, I immediately contact our canine officer, and I'm sending them to that location. So canine officer goes over there, and we're trying to confirm or dispel. There should be blood, there should be hair, there should be evidence, drag marks of someone killing a deer at that
Sure.
location. I mean, we've all hunted. We know what's left behind when you kill a deer.
Yeah.
And so none of that is there. The great thing, there were also surveillance cameras there at this location. So that officer goes into the business. Hey, we're conducting an investigation. Can we look at your surveillance? We have a time period that the guy has admitted to being there. Guess what we found? Nothing, because he wasn't there.
Right.
Interesting.
So we're able to dispel a lot of these half-truths very quickly, and our canine officers are very instrumental in that. And not only do they find things for us, but they can also prove things didn't happen.
Gotcha.
So they're good in those ways.
And then I guess is he talking about an accomplice at this point, or not? He's not putting his friend in the
the
mix.
Basically, at this point, everything's just with him. He's the only sole individual acting on everything. So like I said, we kind of go in circles for a little while with him there at the truck. It's just me and him still talking on exactly what happened. I had him kind of run through the story several times, and every time it changed a little bit from the first time. So nothing really made sense to me. And I tried to explain that to him. We took it with, the last thing. I was like, all right, well, we'll just move on to the next step here. So he did give us consent to look through the house and everything like that evening. I had him go get the bow and all that stuff, bring it out so that I could see that.
And did he have the cape at this point, or the
we hadn't even gotten to that point yet.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to, I was like, look, can I look through the house, backyard and stuff like that, just see if there's any evidence or anything like that. Obviously, he says yes, but I'm already in my mind thinking, he's had a whole, 12 hours to clean everything up that he wanted to clean up.
Sure.
If he's going to give me consent to go willingly look through his house, I'm not really going to find anything.
Right.
But we searched the house real quick. There's some deer meat and stuff in the freezer, and out in the sheds and stuff like that. We find, some stands and things of that nature. He shows us, where his muzzle loaders and all that stuff are in the house. We found some spots in the backyard where it looked like he'd been cleaning some deer. There's some blood and stuff like that on the grass where he'd been hanging a deer up or something like that. So once I go into the house and we have all the evidence outside with the bow and all that, I went ahead and had First Sergeant Bumgarner come to my truck from his location just to basically hold all that evidence for me, because I was the only one that went in the house with him.
Yeah.
Right then, so we can see that in his backyard, that the picture that he posted online with the stump right there laying, that's right there in the backyard. And you can kind of tell from the picture, there's still frost on the ground, all that stuff. And his story was, he had shot it south side of Richmond, drug it a half mile down these railroad tracks, all this other stuff, and, got it back home before all the frost, was off, the grass and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So nothing lined up there. At this point, I'm like, all right, it's time to start kind of breaking the story a little bit. And I bring up, say, hey, man, we were here yesterday. I know there's 3 deer laying in the woods behind the house here. They all match up to deer you've killed. The buck that you shot, that you posted a picture of, that's laying in the creek back there. And, from there, then he started kind of denying there's no buck there. I didn't put it up. I was like, I can walk you right down to it. It's still laying there.
Yeah.
I know it is. And He wouldn't come off of a lot of stuff. He wouldn't give up. I started asking him, well, where's the head at? Because, the carcass is laying there. The head's got to be somewhere. He wouldn't give up where that was at that time.
But he's admitted to shooting it, but he won't tell you where it is?
Right.
Correct.
So his initial story was, before we brought up that the carcass was laying in the creek, that I knew of that. He had told me he had given it to some guy he met at a gas station, the whole carcass, because he just wanted to get rid of it after the story kind of started blowing up on social media. He didn't want anything to do with it anymore, so he just gave it to some guy that he met at the gas station. Came to his house, loaded it up for him, and
That was the story.
That was the story. I knew the deer was laying in the backyard the whole time. And through the interview, too, we learned that the one deer that he had a picture of it with it caped out from earlier in the season, that was at a local taxidermist in Chesterfield. The first picture that he had posted online with another deer, that one he wouldn't give up where that head was. That was one that was skull-capped, laying in the woods, but he wouldn't give up where the antlers were.
Only one of these 2 were checked in, right?
Correct.
I imagine that's the one at the taxidermist in Chesterfield.
That's correct.
That's the one he'd said where that was. The other one, I'm sure, was somewhere else.
Yeah.
Okay. And this was another potential Hollywood cemetery buck as well, right?
Yes.
That was. I mean, it was. I remember seeing that picture. That was a very nice deer.
A real symmetrical deer one.
Yeah.
It's a big 8-pointer, like a 18,
big
19-inch wide,
Yeah.
tall tine 8-pointer.
And I remember, I think that photographer had posted a recent picture of that deer
Yes.
on that thread of that post too. So okay, yeah, that's coming back to me now.
Right. So we're still, a lot of this, we're in the backyard now interviewing them, and I'd been going, I think, close to 4 hours, 3.5 hours interviewing this guy, and he just would not come off of where, the Hollywood buckhead was. It just, I got rid of it. I don't know where it's at.
I'm curious too at this point. I mean, has he outright denied, no, that's not the Hollywood buck? I mean, did it ever come up, hey, we have reason to believe this is the Hollywood buck?
No, he never denied that it wasn't. I think he thought we were going to take it at face value that it had crossed the river and he had shot it, wherever he said he had shot it at, which even with him admitting he shot it where he said he did, he still was trespassing
Sure,
at that
100%.
piece.
Based upon his own story there.
So we bring him back out to the front, back to the truck, and we just try a tactic where, I'll switch off. I'll have First Sergeant Bumgarner, talk to him a little bit and give me a break because I'd been, like I said, with him for about 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
And we're just going in circles here.
Yeah.
So at that point, like I said, First Sergeant Bumgarner calls him over to the front of my patrol vehicle and does a little, I think you talked to him for about 30 or 40 minutes.
Yeah, I talked to him for probably close to an hour myself. And in talking to him during that time, again, we already know some things, some untruths that have been told to us that we're able to, basically confront him with. And so just, kind of reaffirm that, hey, we know what's going on. And by this time, it's, it's hitting starting to hit the national news, like you said, the Meat Eater, podcasts, Outdoor Life is picking this up. Of course, local news is all over it.
Yeah.
So at this point, it's a situation that's...
He's like one of the most hated guys in America at this
It's a situation that's really bigger than us and him standing there
Sure.
at that point.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the way I, used to talk to him about that is like, this is a big situation that's going on that, you probably didn't realize was going to start when you killed this deer. And so, just kind of talked to him a little bit and just kind of kept it low key and just had a general conversation with him. And during that time was able to, get some more information about, the individual that he was with, that he was actually with someone, which was, we had previously heard from the neighbors. He really didn't want to, tell us who that was. He wanted to, kind of protect that person, which we understand that. But we need to bring some conclusion to to the community and really the country about what happened to this deer. And he's really the only one that can help us do that at this point. So we're still kind of trying to. We still at this point don't know where the actual head of the deer is. So again, Officer Howlett has asked him, and says he's give it to this guy at the gas station. Well, then the story changed that he gave it to a friend to take care of, and that had been destroyed. And that's what he said, that it had been destroyed. I was like, well, destroyed is a really vague term. Is it chopped up with an axe? Did you throw it in the river off of a bridge? Where did you do it at? Because we can go find it. We need to have some evidence. We need to recover this.
Yeah.
So we're just kind of going down this path and still getting a lot of those half-truths that I was talking about. And, after I talked to him for about an hour, he finally agreed. He said, can I go get the deer and bring it back to you? And I said, wait a minute. So you previously told me that you didn't know where it was, that you gave it to a friend, but now you know where it is. I said, that's good. You know where it is. That's great. I said, but, if you had been truthful with me, and Officer Howlett 4 or 5 hours ago, I may have let you done that, but
right.
I'm not going to let you go get it and bring it back and potentially actually destroy it.
Yeah. So at this point, you just say, we're going to go do this together? Or
so at this point, he's like, well, can I follow you over there? Or will you follow me over there? And I'm like, sure. And again, when we get to his house, we know the 2 vehicles that he drives. None of those vehicles are in the driveway. So how is he coming and going?
Right.
Either someone's bringing him or something else. And so he's like, well, I don't have a car. Can I ride with you? And I'm like, well, he's not under arrest at this point, so we're not allowed to give those type of rides in our patrol vehicles. It's like, I don't have a car. And I was like, you mean the car that's parked in your neighbor's driveway right there? Which we had.
You already knew that was his.
Knew that was his. And so at this point he's like, yeah, that's my car. So he gets in his car, and we proceed to go. And before we left, I was like, well, I don't know where we're going. Show me on a map where we're going. So because we want to know where we're going at this point.
Right.
We don't want to be led into something
You don't want to
unknown.
You don't go in blind.
Right. We don't want to go in blind. So I made him show us on a Google map where he was taking us. And then it was a dead-end road, and there's a gas line down there. He says,
"Oh, so it's not at a residence."
He says, "Down here at the end of this road, at this gas line." So he gets in his car, and again, I'm riding with the PO at this point still. He drives maybe 50 yards from where his car is parked, and he stops. And he gets out, and he walks back to I'm in the passenger seat. He walks back to my side of the patrol vehicle. And I told the PO, I'm like, he's had second thoughts, like, we're probably not getting this deer tonight. So he walks back, and he's like, man, I'm out of gas. And the distance that we had to drive was 20 or 25 minutes from where we were currently at to where he had reported to us. Now, mind you, he's told us many untruths at this point.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we've got to go 20 or 25 minutes from where we are to where this deer is reported to be. But now we're out of gas. We're kind of talking, and he's like, I don't have really, enough money on me to get gas. I'm like, well, where's the nearest gas station at? So gas station's like 2 blocks up the road. It's like, you go to the gas station, I'll put some gas in your car. If you're gonna do this, like, you're gonna do the right thing, I want to help you do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So I want to help you do that. So we go up there.
This is comical almost.
I
It's not funny,
I put
but
$10 worth of gas in his car, and off we go to Chesterfield. We've been on this, for 6-7 hours now. Time is just. It just seems like it's slowing down, but time is like flying by.
Yeah.
And I'm curious too, because we're 2 days in. This is day two.
Day
and you're
two.
6 or 7 hours in here on day 2. Obviously, this thing blew up. Did you guys at this point? Did you know how big this case was at this point, or were you just working another case?
We absolutely did.
Okay, awesome.
Oh yeah, we absolutely knew what was going on.
People above you were like, let's get this. Whatever you need, we'll get this thing cleared up as soon as possible.
Right. It was pretty much all hands on
deck in the region, and even out of the region. We had at least three or 4 different canine handlers that came.
Wow.
Because every time we were getting a location, we're just sending these canine handlers out here to try to find or dispel.
I had that
story.
feeling when I was seeing how big it was getting. I said, man, I bet you they're throwing everything they got at this.
Yeah, a lot happened. The first 36 hours that we worked the case is when a lot of that stuff really came to fruition.
Yeah.
And that's how we made a lot of the headway that we did was in that first 36 hours. After that, it kind of slowed down a little bit.
Sure.
Once we had the heads and stuff in our possession, but that first 36 was where we didn't have it. It was basically we need to work as fast as we can, and as thorough and methodically as we can to try and get that head back.
So we got gas in the car. Sorry.
So now we're on our way to this location in Chesterfield. And we get to, like I said, it's on a dead-end road. The dead-end road's probably half a mile long maybe. And so we get there, and he pulls into a parking lot, and we're, behind him, obviously following him, and pulls into a parking lot and gets out again. Like, what's going on there? So he gets out, and again, he's still trying to protect his friend, which we understand. But we still need to know who this friend is at some point, obviously, too.
Sure.
So what are they involved? Are they just an innocent party? Or are they, what's their involvement? And we don't know that at this point. So at this point, he gets out, he walks back again. He's like, this is where I got to leave you. And so he's like, I'm going to go down there. I'm going to go recover the deer, and I'm going to bring it back to you. And I had looked at I'd already pulled this up on the map as we're driving. Like, it's really one way in, one way out. So unless he went on foot somewhere down there, basically would have to drive back by our location.
Was it down in a gully or something like that? Or?
We didn't know.
Okay.
So we didn't know. At this point, he's taken us here. He is, again, he's still not telling the whole truth, but it sometimes in law enforcement, in these investigations, there's a little bit of risk involved.
Yeah.
And at this point, we really didn't have anything other than, he's saying that this is where it's at. So I'm like, hey, look, I've been honest with you. I expect you to be honest with me. We basically let him drive that little distance away, and we stayed there and waited. And he was gone maybe, 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops.
It was a long 5 or 10
It felt like an eternity.
I bet.
And come right back, pulled in the parking lot to us. And when he pulls in, I can see this orange trash bag in the front seat, and it's touching the top of the headliner in his car. And so at that point, I basically was like, well, it's got to be in that trash bag.
Yeah.
And it was so we obviously get out and start talking to him some more, and there's the Hollywood deer.
Just a caped out head?
In a
or?
bucket. No, it was just cut off like right behind the ear, so
Oh,
just like, kind of right under the throat there. And but it was in like one of those like VDOT trash bags.
Yeah.
So we've got the deer. Of course, we're continuing to ask some questions about the deer, where it was, and still, not really being 100% truthful with us still, even though we've got the deer now. And again, we knew where he previously told us where the other deer was that he checked in. We knew what taxidermist that was at. So, we're doing our thing and working on our stuff, and had my PO just run his driver's license because before he was just a suspect. Obviously, now we know, he has knowledge of where this deer is. Obviously, he's either killed it or knows who killed it. So we're going to add him to our call, our stuff, run him and everything. And he comes back that he had a warrant out of the, I believe it was city of Richmond, for some theft stuff. At that point, we ended up contacting Richmond City PD, and we took him into custody for their warrant and transported him to the city where they kind of took custody of him that evening.
Wow. I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
Wow.
So that was a good break for you guys.
Yeah.
Right.
At that point, we've been on this. I think I'd worked about a 15-hour day at that point from the time I started. Because like I said, when he called him at like 3 o'clock, that was close to the end of my shift that day. So I just kept on going. But
y'all's PO, by the way, gets a good 2 days of work out of this.
Quick.
Yeah, I bet that was exciting for him.
So again, it's late. We've turned him over. We're obviously going to follow up, do more investigation. And so, at daylight the next morning, I had a canine officer with me, and we went straight to that gas line because we want to find footprints. We want to deploy the dog. We want to see, are there any other deer down there?
Sure.
What else is there?
I don't want you to see my hiding spot.
We don't know. We don't know, but we're going to try to find that spot. So we go to the end of that road, and lo and behold, parked at the last house on the road is a vehicle that very closely describes the description of the vehicle that the neighbor described, that they showed up the morning the deer was killed at 3:30 in the morning.
This is like when that music would play if it was Law and Order.
Yeah.
The plot
And
thickens.
so it's on the road. It's on the right, parked on the highway, and I walk on the highway, and I kind of can see in the vehicle there's hunting equipment in there.
Yep.
So at this point, then we did a knock and talk of that residence, and found the owner of the vehicle, and started talking to him about his knowledge of, does he know the other gentleman that we've been talking to. And at that point he told us that he did, so we had an interview with him on that day.
Okay.
Yep.
We'll back up a little bit too. So the night that we obtained the Hollywood head too, after we had obtained that and all the other evidence from the residents that we needed, it was, 10 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah, it was probably 10, 11.
We made a phone call to the taxidermist at around 10 o'clock at night.
Not thinking he would answer at all.
Yeah.
He ended up calling us back, and I was like, hey, we need to come to the shop and look, for this deer head that you have. So we did obtain that other second head, which was that real big symmetrical 8 that night as well. So we had two of the deer heads.
Did that taxidermist know
He had no idea what was going on. I mean, we were only 36 some hours into it and stuff. He's like, what is it all about? I said, you can probably watch the news tomorrow you'll learn about it. So we, like I said, we had both those heads. We had, a suspected weapon. We had a cell phone that we had taken off the individual as well.
And he's in city jail?
Yeah, so he went
That's a great place for him to be.
Right, so he went to Richmond jail. So then, like I said, the next morning, First Sergeant Bumgarner and some of the canines are heading to do this interview or go down the end of this street that, where it was obtained. Once, they found out that vehicle was matching and they do the knock and talk, they let me know, and then I started securing some warrants, some search warrants for the vehicle and the house down at the end of that street.
Okay.
Because that's where we suspected that, like I said, that deer head came from.
And y'all figured this was his assailant or whatever?
Yes.
Yeah.
Accomplice.
Okay. Accomplice, sorry. Accomplice.
I'm here for you.
Yeah.
So we ended up, like I said, after the knock and talk, I think they stayed on scene there. That guy, he ended up leaving the house
for a few minutes.
A few minutes and came back before I could get over there with the warrants. Essentially, we got a search warrant for the vehicle. When he got back, we knocked and talked again of the house. There's on the front porch there at the stoop, there's the same bag of
orange trash
bags that was, from the suspect's vehicle laying there on the front porch. Because the head had looked like it had been buried maybe somewhere in the backyard or something. It had a bunch of dirt.
On it.
Okay.
So it was hidden somewhere.
Right.
But we ended up doing, like I said, a search warrant on the vehicle. When we opened it up, it just reeked of like cleaner. Like he had just, when he left, he went to go vacuum it out. And when we opened it up, it just smelled like he had cleaned it.
Yeah.
He did a very half
Half-ass job.
On it. There was still blood like all over the vehicle on every panel inside. There was, blood splatter, deer hair. There was archery equipment in there, shotgun shells, 22 shells. I mean, all kinds of stuff in
A lot of hunting equipment in there.
Right. That individual really didn't come off of much at all. He didn't really want to talk to us. He did make some incriminating comments in the course of, us searching his vehicle, but he really wouldn't say, what his participation was in it. But, the whole vehicle was basically photographed, but there was blood, from the back all the way to the front, driver's seat.
And it was his vehicle.
It was his vehicle.
Okay.
So that was all photographed. This was, like I said, this was 48 hours into it now.
Okay.
So we've got basically two people, two suspects. We've got the vehicle that we believe the deer was transported in. We've got 2 of the 3 deer heads. From there, it kind of shifted towards, okay, now we need to find out, where exactly the deer was shot and start trying to piece together the timeline of when it was shot and try to get all the evidence we can, digital evidence. And from there it was, both cemeteries were searched, Mount Calvary and Hollywood. Both of them actually have security cameras at the front gates, but coincidentally, none of them were working at the time. So we didn't catch a break there.
Right.
I did hear you say earlier that when you were talking about the evidence you had taken, I heard you mention cell phone.
Right.
And I don't know if you can even speak to this, but at any point during the investigation, are cell phone records used for GPS coordinates and things like that to show them on premises of the cemeteries?
Right. So cell phone stuff, we did use some of that to determine a location, but the main stuff we were able to obtain that really helped was security footage. So at both Suspect 1 and Suspect 2's locations where they lived at, we had a security camera, leaving both neighborhoods. One was a Ring camera, and then one was just a restaurant camera, basically. So we were able to tell when each of them left and when they were coming back to their houses. Built a timeline off of that. And then we also we caught a little bit of a break to where there was a camera on an apartment complex about 2 blocks or so from the cemetery, and the main suspect's truck had actually broke down the night prior on the 13th.
Or ran out of gas?
It broke down.
Okay.
Broke down.
Right in front of a security camera. 1 o'clock in the morning.
Stuff you can't make up.
We really caught a good break on that, and it was. I mean, it's the most clearest images you could see for 3 o'clock in the morning, and I want to just say that the community, letting us access these cameras, we basically canvassed all the neighborhoods for Ring cameras and other security cameras, and you can't go anywhere in the city without being on camera.
Yeah.
We're basically just able to track their movements. That's how we got to the apartment complex, was we're actually just tracking their movements from ring camera to ring camera, just door to door to door. Okay, well, you turn left on this street, turn right on this street. And, we were able just to use those Ring cameras to basically lead us, in the direction of the cemetery.
That's incredible.
Right. So that night, like I said, the night prior, the 13th, the suspect vehicle, it breaks down like 1 o'clock in the morning or so. A couple hours later, I think it's at like 3 or something like that, the black SUV is then seen on camera right there at the truck that's broken down. They're both outside walking around the vehicle trying to get it fixed. When they leave, exit the frame of the camera, heading towards the cemetery, and I think it was like a 6-minute delay before they show back up on frame. And when we drove that out, 6 minutes basically would have put you right at the back of Mount Calvary Cemetery and then back to where the truck
Meaning
was
like they
broken.
were picking up something.
Right.
Okay.
So based off of that, we were saying, okay, well, the deer was probably shot earlier that night. They were coming back at 1 or something like that to go pick it up. Truck just happens to break down. He calls the buddy, hey, come pick me up. We got to go get this deer. They drive back there, grab it, throw it in the back of the black SUV. 3:30, they show back up at, the main suspect's house, and that's when the neighbor hears them outside the house.
So do you think he shot this deer was probably killed at nighttime?
Based off of what we could determine, yes, it was probably shot sometime between 9 and 10 the night of the 13th.
Gotcha.
Huh.
Okay.
Another charge.
At this point, y'all are pretty happy with the results and what you're finding out. And is this guy still in jail at this point, or is he bailed out, or?
I think by this time he got out on a bond, yeah.
Okay.
Right. He had bonded out, I think, the next morning on the charge from Richmond. After that, once we took the head, we didn't have any other contact with him at all.
Okay. Did he lawyer up at this point?
Like I said, we didn't have any contact with him, anymore. After that, we had everything that we needed. It was more just going through the digital evidence and stuff like that, a lot of the footage and stuff, and piecing everything back together, and then determining what charges we wanted, to bring. So I think in total it was 20 charges on him or 21 charges on him, and then 6 charges on the other individual that helped. But that's, like I said, we didn't have any other. I never spoke with the gentleman until court that morning when we finally went to court for it.
Okay. And then how long after all this before you went to court? Where you showed up to court?
I think we took out most of the charges. Everything happened, like I said, middle of December. I think we took charges out.
And we had one charge on him at least like the second day.
Right.
Already.
That day we had a charge for, I think, illegal possession on him, and then the remaining charges I think were served like in January.
Okay.
So,
see, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of attention on this case. Y'all wanted to be sure you had everything you possibly could. I'm sure you were catching pressure from every direction in this.
At this point, we're in consultation with the Richmond City Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and they actually assigned us a special prosecutor just for this case, which was kudos to them, and we couldn't have done the work that we did without them.
Yeah,
and so we really appreciated that, and as you know, it's the city of Richmond, so there's not a lot of opportunity for hunting.
Yeah,
in the city of Richmond,
absolutely,
a lot of fishing opportunity, but not hunting. So in my 18 years, I don't know of another hunting case or violation that's been prosecuted by a CPO before this one.
Yeah,
just because there's not that much. Not saying this stuff hasn't happened.
It's definitely.
But just the this was one of the first cases that was brought to our attention. In the city.
Yeah, it's a unique case. I'm sure it was for both of you guys and everyone else involved. So at court, he shows up. This is when he's got to plead guilty or not guilty. Does he work? Does he have an attorney or a public defender at this point?
Right. So he had gotten, I think, just a public defender. He had an attorney for his other charge out of Richmond, but we had essentially tried to work a plea agreement. The CA was able to write something up, present it to him. They did agree to that, which pretty much we got everything that we were looking for, plea agreement, and I mean I was satisfied with it.
It was a 10 or 11 page plea agreement. It was pretty lengthy plea agreement. And part of that plea agreement was we want to know where the other third deer is, because we still don't have it at this point. We only have the 2.
Yeah.
And we want to bring closure to this case, and I know I'm not satisfied until I've done everything I can on a case, so part of that whole case was just we want this third deer, and that's going to be part of the plea agreement, and fortunately it was.
Okay, so he came clean on the first, I guess the first one.
Yes.
Right. Okay. And then was that also a Hollywood buck, or was it a?
Believe so. I believe there was some pictures taken of it earlier in the year, like September time frame, like for photographers taking some photos of it, and that was suspected to be out of one of the cemeteries as well.
So this guy, I mean, and y'all's conversation with him, at some point, did he just openly admit or just tell you why he did it? He or his whole timeline where he was there and he saw the deer and he just developed a plan to go in and hunt these deer?
We never really got that.
Really?
We never really got that. And on the day of court, we're trying to get this part of the plea agreement was this third deer, and he still was giving us half truths about where this deer is and so we're consultation with his attorneys and with the Commonwealth attorney, and he finally told me that he didn't know where it was, because if he violated any of that plea agreement, and part of that plea agreement was turning over that head, and we don't want someone to sign a plea agreement if they're not capable of upholding that agreement.
Sure.
If you don't know where it is, you don't know where it is.
Right.
And you definitely don't want to sign something that you can't uphold.
Sure.
Because he had a lot of other stuff that would have came down if he didn't uphold that plea agreement.
Mm-hmm.
And so before walking into court, he was able to say that, yes, I do know where it is. And I'm like, well, when can you get it to us? So it's like, well, I can't remember what day court was on, Thursday or something like that. And I said, well, can you get it to us, in a week? And it was written down in the plea agreement that he had X days to return that third deer head to us, or he had violated the plea agreement.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to, I think it was 2 days after court, we finally got our hands on that third rack.
Well, that's good. So case closed, and he admits to guilt, is found guilty, and He's already served a night in jail, and that was for a non-related case to y'all's case. That was a not robbery, you said, but like burglary or something, like larceny, something. Yeah. And so after that, he pleads guilty, and the plea agreement. Is there any jail time or anything like that? What sort of punishment did he receive? I can't recall. I can't.
Does this individual get to hunt in the state of Virginia again?
Not for a while. So in the plea agreement, he pled guilty to every charge that we charged him with. So all 21 charges he was found guilty on. The main things that we wanted to see were the restitution for all 3 deer heads, substantial fines, and then the loss of hunting privileges, not just the license, to purchase a license, but to hunt, his privilege to hunt.
Yeah.
So the CA did a really good job on writing up the agreement, and it was set for a 100-year suspension. Some of that was reduced down basically to where he's 24 years is where he cannot legally have any privilege to hunt. And that's not just in the state of Virginia. That's any state that's in the compact, the Wildlife Compact. So I believe it's 49 states or 48 states.
There's 49 states in the wildlife. It's called the Wildlife Violators Compact. So if you're revoked in North Carolina, every year they send their revocations, or periodically they'll send their revocations to Virginia or every other state that's in the compact. So
and if he's caught hunting without a license and with this ban, or he could be hunting under a fake license or something like that too. Obviously there's some serious charges he would face at that point too.
Right. So with all the suspended, so he did do, I think he had 3 months that he actually had to serve in the city.
Even better
for that. He had some time over his head too, basically, if he violated any condition of the agreement. I think he had around like 6.5 years over his head. So if he violates any of that stuff, he's and is found guilty of that, then he's got 6.5 years to serve.
Wow.
I think I heard you say a loss of hunting privileges, not just licensure.
Correct.
And I guess that means, there's certain circumstances within the state of Virginia, within the Commonwealth, that you're license exempt, correct?
Right.
Your own property, your
Correct.
family's,
Right.
your parents' property, that sort of thing. So even in those situations, no, can't do it. Absolutely not.
Correct.
Well, it's
That's
good.
incredible.
Anybody could say, well, y'all are just making an example out of him. He should have been made an example of. It's ridiculous that somebody would do this. It wasn't just a local outrage. It was a national outrage. And, man, I commend you guys for the way you guys handled the case and at the speed at which y'all were able to get this thing locked down and solved. That's awesome.
I think one of the things that I guess I'm in awe of, or that I appreciated the most, aside from the work that you guys put in, was how quickly the hunting community jumped on and aided the investigation.
Absolutely.
Like other people out there, we get so many anti-hunters in the world. This is conservation at its finest. These guys are doing the wrong thing to give the face of conservationists and hunters and fishermen, a bad look. But that community kind of really rallied around, so to speak, and really aided you guys a ton, right?
Yeah, we couldn't have done this without the community's help. When we're, in these neighborhoods and stuff, canvassing, and we've got people that are jogging, that are walking their dogs, that are walking up to us, say, hey, we saw this, or
and the initial tips too, right?
Yeah,
Coming
right,
in from,
right.
that's just from
great.
the word go.
Yep.
That's awesome.
That's good. Any other crazy things happen within that investigation between the start and finish of that?
No, it was very, like I said, high speed at the front end of it. I know people really wanted to see charges, brought right then and there.
Yeah.
But, and the way I like to handle my investigations is a little bit more methodical. And, I had to work a lot quicker than what I would have liked to work on the case. But because of the pressure from media, the pressure from, within the agency on making sure, this guy was prosecuted and stuff. The way, too, that I thought of it is, the longer we go without having any of these heads in our possession, the less likely we're ever going to get them back.
Yeah.
So that was kind of, like I said, what really pushed us to work quickly on the front end of things. And I know, like I said, it took, over a month to get the charges out, but a lot of that was just really
Crossing your eyes.
Yeah.
We want to make
Crossing
sure
your
that
T's, dotting your
we're
I's.
very methodical in that if we make a charge, we don't want to make a charge that we can't prove.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
There's a lot of things.
There's a lot of eyeballs on this
A lot
case,
of times
man.
doing this investigation, there's things that you may know, but you may not be able to prove.
Yeah. Right.
And so, we're obviously not going to charge somebody with something that we can't prove.
Yeah.
Or don't have the evidence that backs up that charge.
So you guys took possession of all 3 heads.
Yep.
Where are the heads? Where's the Hollywood head? Is that something the public will ever see? Is that something that'll be in DWR headquarters at some point where it deserves to?
So as of right now, all 3 mounts or all 3 heads, antlers, They're all getting mounted right now.
Excellent.
So all 3 will be on display. I'm not sure exactly where they will be on display at, but all 3 are getting.
We can make a shrine right here at Green Top for them if that's possible.
Yeah.
And I do know the Hollywood rack itself is there are companies that do replicas.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a replica made of that.
Okay.
Because that way, people are talking about let's do a full body mount,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah.
The body on the deer wasn't that impressive. It was,
It's one of the city deer,
it's
right?
one city
Yeah.
deer, and just the logistics of trying to, people want to see it, right? We want people to see what Virginia, the trophy deer that Virginia does have, and just the logistics of trying to move a full body.
Yeah, it's
deer
it'd be
around.
tougher. Well, you guys had your hands on it too. I mean,
Right.
up close and personal. I mean, it's an
Is it
impressive
impressive
deer.
as it look?
It's been scored. It's over 200 inches. Boone
Yeah.
Crockett.
Yeah, I want to say, I can't remember the inside spread. It was 25 plus or 28
Cool.
plus or something like that. The larger 8 that he had shot, that fit inside of
Oh wow, of the Hollywood
of the
buck.
Hollywood buck.
Did you get an approximate age on the deer that were taken?
We did. So I had a taxidermist remove the lower jaw from the head there. We took it to one of the biologists at the agency. Based off of his best, estimate
Sure,
on
yeah,
it,
it's
8 to 9 years.
Oh, wow.
Once deer get past that, 5, 6 years old, it's really, their teeth just get worn down.
Oh, yeah.
It's just an educated guess pretty much. But based upon the photo evidence of the deer and, the biological determinations, 8 to 9 years.
Yeah, and those deer in Hollywood Cemetery, they don't travel very far. They live mainly in one small little area and forage right there, and and
They're eating people's flowers, and they're walking in people's yards regularly.
Yep. Well, hey guys, I appreciate you guys taking the time to do this. This is it'll be a delight for our listeners because this is a really cool topic that it was talked about for a long time. It was the hottest
customers
topic
at every
during.
counter we're talking about it, especially guys. One of the departments I manage is archery, and it was definitely a hot topic back there for a while.
And back to your point of the public being able to see these deer, our DWR, the Law Enforcement Division, is currently working on a trailer that we can move around the state that's going to showcase some of these cases, especially ones that are from our tip line. So if you want to report a wildlife violation, you can text a DWR tip, or you can call 1-800-237-5712, and you can report these crimes anonymously. So likely the Hollywood case will be showcased in this trailer that's going to be traveling around to such as the outdoor shows that go on,
We need
the sportsman
expo.
shows, the state fair, those things. So we really want to showcase, not only what Virginia has to offer, but what you can do as a citizen or a hunter to protect that.
And it showcases the jobs that you guys do,
and how you can help CPOs do their job.
Yeah, I mean, you guys. We started out saying it's an unfortunate reality, that conservation officers don't always get, people don't always look at them, with reverence, right? But that's an awesome opportunity to show that you guys you're not out there just writing tickets. You're out there conserving what we love, what we want. You guys, I mean, that was an incredible case.
Well, yeah.
People are doing it the wrong way, and you went after them, and you got them, and you got justice with the help of the public. So that's just so cool. You guys will be able to showcase that, and hopefully we'll have that expo.
That's right. That'd be kind of cool if it's operational by then. We'd love to have it at Expo. That'd be great. Thanks again for being here, guys. I really appreciate it. This was an awesome topic. The true crime series that you guys are doing. I think there's the second episode y'all did with Shelby. I think hosts. Does she host all the episodes?
She will.
That was a great episode too, by the way. And that's what kind of got me thinking. I'm like, man, this would be a great topic.
Thank you guys for being here. Thank you for what you do.
Yeah,
all of that.
Appreciate it.
So absolutely
Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the Green Top Outdoors Podcast. Hunting, fishing, and all things outdoors. It's not just a hobby, it's a lifestyle. Like and subscribe to the Green Top Outdoors Podcast wherever you listen to podcasts, or learn more at greentop.com.